Hi there, welcome to Quality of Life Ministries. I'm going to speak up a little bit because of the water fountain behind us. Our topic is going to be on humble. What does that word humble mean? Humble is a low view of one's importance. We become less important and the Lord becomes more important. And so humble, a lot of times when we think about humble, we think about circumstances, if we're going through negative circumstances, or sometimes we can say, our circumstances are humbling. But the word humble, the word we're going to talk about today is humble. James 1:9. James is speaking to believers here, and he says, believers in humble circumstances ought to take pride in their high position. Again, in another text, he says, believers of humble means should take pride in his high position. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. First of all, a lot of us were dead in sin for numerous years BC before we came to Christ. And so a lot of us have a past. Our circumstances helped humble us so that we would go to Christ. And that's what that's all about. He's writing to believers, and he says if you're a believer in Christ and you are humble, then this is a high position. And I'm going to kind of explain what humble means in the text here. In the text, humble means dependent on Christ. That's what he's talking about. So if you are dependent on Christ, you are a humble person. In fact, to be dependent on Christ, to live the Christian life through us, that is a very high position. And that's what James is talking about here in this text. So we want to keep this very simple, straight to the point. And so all of our teachings are presented in such a way that we bring them to you from context. And so you can agree to disagree, but the gospel is not debated. It's either accepted or rejected. And so that's what it is. The word humble just means dependent on Christ. Remember 1 Thessalonians 5:24. He who has called you is faithful, and he will do it. Meaning he will live the Christian life as we are humble and dependent on him. And so remember, it's not circumstances. You might be going through a difficult season right now. Okay? It's not your circumstances. Okay? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about allowing circumstances to bring us to a place of humble. And so that a lot of times that's what negative circumstances are for. To bring us to a place of humble so we will be dependent on Christ. Remember, the branch was placed in the vine for a reason. And now as believers, we're to choose to live from the life-giving Spirit of Christ to lead and guide us as his children. And so remember, our flesh is going to fight this, of course. Paul talks about this. The Apostle Paul in Galatians says the flesh fights the Spirit. And what that means is, as new believers, early believers, had a really difficult time with choosing to live from the life-giving Spirit of Christ. And so what happens is we chose to live from the flesh. And of course, that's a dangerous thing, because we're going to fight that. Our flesh, remember, is not going to line up with Christ. It's going to want to dodge Christ and go left. And so what God has to do sometimes is allow bulldozers to push our will over to his will. And a lot of times this can feel like brokenness. And so it's a lot easier to just choose today, because our will is the chooser. And let's choose to live from the life-giving Spirit of Christ today. And it's by grace through faith. And so let's just choose that. And that way we can deny ourselves and not let the Lord do that for us. Remember, you're the most important person here, because without you we could not teach. And remember, we're learning so we can teach, and we teach so we can learn. Thank you, and God bless.